Hey guys, I just started making my grocery list and there are some things on it that I thought that I could talk to you guys about. So if you guys are anything like us, the price of groceries is going crazy right now and it's really busting that budget. And so knowing a couple of tricks on how to kind of help out with that, I guess, has been really key for us. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. So the number one thing that I like to do to cut down on our grocery budget is to know what to cook from scratch. So some things make a lot of sense to cook from scratch and some things just don't. So I thought I would share with you guys today a list of things that I definitely make from scratch all the time, and then a list of things that I just don't. Things that it just makes a lot more sense for us to just buy from a grocery store. So the first thing that I always make from scratch is bone broth. I make chicken bone broth pretty much every week. I've made beef too. We just don't use beef nearly as much as we use chicken. And so I always make it. Now I pull out my pressure canner to preserve mine because I have a lot more space on my kitchen pantry shelves than I have in my freezer. But if you don't have a pressure canner or you don't want to take the time to do that, that's totally fine. You can just put it in a Ziploc bag and stick it in your freezer and pull it out and thaw it whenever you want to have super nutritious bone broth. So I will say you can probably save some money by going for like the cubes of chicken bouillon or the powder. But this just has some nutritional benefits that you can't get in that powder. So it costs me like pennies. I make a roast chicken pretty much every week. And so because I do that, it really doesn't cost me hardly anything at all. The tomatoes, the carrots and celery and onion, I always keep frozen in my freezer or in my refrigerator just to make bone broth and then to use for other ingredients anyway. And so it's stuff that I just keep. So it just makes a lot more sense for us to make this rather than buy it, because if I were going to buy this, it would cost me a ton of money every month for how much I go through bone broth. The next one that I make are my bread products. So I have French baguettes here that I made yesterday, and we've just kind of been munching on. It actually saves me a ton of time when I'm going grocery shopping because I don't have to spend that time in that part of the grocery store at all, which I really love. But we basically use the same ingredients to make almost every kind of bread product you can imagine. So croissants, baguettes, I make, goodness, what else? Sandwich bread, bagels, cinnamon rolls, tortillas, flatbread, pita, just tons and tons and tons of different bread recipes, but they all basically use the same ingredients, just in different amounts and maybe put together in a different way. But it just makes a lot more sense for us. It does take time, but that's okay with me. I am a stay-at-home mom. That might not be true for you, but for us, that is true. And so making homemade bread is just something that I really enjoy doing. So I'm absolutely going to do that for my family. So the next one that I have is Caesar dressing. So we use a lot of Caesar dressing in our house. It's one of the ones that the most people, I guess, really like. And the ingredients in it are all things that are pretty stable, shelf stable, refrigerator stable. They stay good for a long time. And because they stay good for a long time, I can keep them in the refrigerator and just put together a batch of Caesar dressing anytime that we want it. And I just make however much we're actually going to eat, because if you make it and put it together, it doesn't last very long. And I learned that the hard way. And so for us, it just makes a lot more sense to keep those ingredients. Those are things that we're going to end up using a lot in other recipes anyway. And so, yeah, I prefer to make our Caesar dressing from scratch. Any kind of vinaigrette, usually that's about the same thing, that it costs a lot less to make it than it does to buy it. So those sorts of things I do tend to just make them from scratch. Another one is yogurt. I'm actually making yogurt right now over there because we go through about half a gallon of yogurt every week, and that's a lot of yogurt. That's a lot to try to buy and keep. That would cost us quite a bit. And so I just prefer to make it. It only costs the amount that it costs me for a half a gallon of milk, however much that is at the time. And that's definitely cheaper than a half a gallon of yogurt at the store. And it does take some time as far as like the culturing goes, but the actual hands-on time, as long as I'm home for the day, it takes me just about maybe 5 minutes to put the whole thing together from start to finish, actual hands-on time. And so it just doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to buy that if I can make it so easily and so much cheaper. So that's definitely one that we prefer to make from scratch rather than buy. All of that being said, I do know my limits, and there are some things that it just doesn't make a lot of sense for us to make because it's maybe stuff that we aren't going to use very often, or things that the ingredients will cost a lot more than just buying it from the store. So one of those things is ranch dressing. I am the only one in my house that likes ranch dressing, and I just don't really eat it that often. And so anytime that I am kind of having a hankering for it, I will just grab some in the produce department. I only like the kind that has to be refrigerated. The kind that doesn't, I am not a fan of. And this honestly probably still doesn't have the best ingredients in it, but it is as good as any that I have ever made at home, if not better. I have never actually found a recipe for ranch dressing that I genuinely enjoy. And so it's just not something that I want to keep the ingredients for, because I'm the only one that's going to eat it anyway. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to make that when I can just buy it a lot cheaper the couple of times a year that I want it. And then the other one for us is pasta sauce. So we actually eat a lot of pasta in our house. We really, really love it. We are huge fans of pasta night. And so we go through a lot of it. Now, if I have fresh tomatoes in my garden or tomatoes that I have canned, it doesn't make sense for us to buy pasta sauce because we already have that stuff and I can just make it from scratch. But if I have run out of that, which has happened every year for my whole married life, if we don't have those things, it doesn't really make sense for me to go out and buy a bunch of tomatoes and take the time to stew them and cook them down and do all of that stuff. If I can just buy a fairly clean, really delicious pasta sauce just from the grocery store, and it's a really convenient dinner for us. And so pasta sauce is definitely one of those things, if I don't already have the tomatoes, that I will just always buy rather than make. So yeah, that's it. Knowing the difference between what to make and what to buy can really help you out on your grocery budget quite a lot. At least it helps us out a lot. If there are things that you guys have found that it just makes a lot more sense for you to make instead of buy, or buy instead of make, I would love to hear what they are. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.